Hi, this is Jim Gibson with Blackstone Cybersecurity, and today I want to talk about the cloud. A lot of discussions about it. What is the cloud? A lot of businesses are afraid to go to the cloud, but today I thought we'd just discuss an introduction to what cloud computing is. And I thought I would start with a definition from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is really the standard when it comes to cybersecurity and IT and things like that. They're the standard, and they're really good at what they do. I really like NIST, and they have a lot of descriptions of what should be done as an IT person and as a cybersecurity person. Anyway, enough. Cloud computing is a model for enabling convenient on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management efforts. And that's really a mouthful when you talk about the cloud and the advantages that the cloud can give you. What is the cloud? Well, we already talked about it, that your email, that your a lot of people do accounting with QuickBooks on the cloud and YouTube and things like that. But who else is using it today? Most large organizations are using it. They know the advantages of the cloud, and so they're using the cloud in many ways. And even organizations that, such as the CIA, the NSA, the Department of Defense, all of them are using the cloud, and at the same time they're putting security information up there. So a lot of people are using the cloud today, and they're using it in such a way that it benefits them and saves them money. So let's look at some of the things that the cloud can do for you, okay? And there's a number of things. There's six things that I'd like to go over concerning the benefits of the cloud. And I think the first thing I want to talk about is the variability of capital expense versus operational expenses. So, if you need a server, you got to get an IT person who understands servers, certification, I hope, and they know what they're doing, and they're keeping up with cybersecurity and things like that. They have to come in, they have to talk to you, they have to spend a lot of time with you to design the system and to set it up, but you also have to buy that hardware. Now, hardware needs to be heated and cooled at the proper times. It has to be patched. It has to be protected. You have to have UPSs and make sure that that it has a proper electricity to it. You have to condition the power going to it. And you also have other issues. You have to do backups. You have to check to make sure the hard drives are working right. You have to make sure all those things are right. And that's all capital expense. Now, if you change it from capital expense to operational expense, it just makes it a lot more sensible. When you buy this computer that's sitting there, it may be bigger than what you need. So you always have to build the computer to the maximum expected extent that it's ever going to be used. And so when you do something like that, there's a bigger expense. You're not always getting the full advantage of that equipment and that software. Of course, you have software licenses, things like that you have to pay for. But if you go to the cloud, it's no longer a capital expense. Now it is a operational expense because you only pay for what you use. And I know it's kind of strange, but you do this all the time. The lights in your building, you don't have a generator sitting out back generating your power, and you didn't put gasoline in it and oil in it and making sure the mechanic has it upgraded when it needs to be, and you shut it down at night when you turn out the lights in your building. No, what you do is you buy your power from the electric company, and you only pay for what you use. So one would be an operational expense, a capital expense, and the other, of course, is an operational expense. So you only pay for what you use, like electricity. You turn on the lights, you pay for the power that goes to the lights. You turn off the lights, you don't pay for the power anymore. And it's the same thing with cloud. When you use the cloud and use it properly, you only pay for what you're actually using. And as soon as you turn off the server in the cloud, you're not paying for it anymore. So it becomes the difference between the two expenses, and it's easier to budget rather than every 2 or 3 years changing out servers and all the things that you have to do. And of course, you're changing out servers, you're changing out hard drives. They have to be properly disposed of, or else you can reveal some of your information you don't want your competitors to know about or other people to know about. So that's the first thing, capital expense compared to operational expense. Operational expense is better, and you only pay for what you use. So that's a lot better than paying for full capacity that you may never use. The next thing, economy of scale. So you might only have a couple servers in your office, but Amazon Web Services and some of the other services out there, Azure, Google has some. I would always go with the big ones because I know that they work on being secure, and being a cybersecurity person, I'm really concerned about that. And we'll talk about that later, maybe in some other video. But the bottom line is they have the economy of scale. So if they have, let's say, a cybersecurity person working for them, which they do, I shouldn't say if they have, they do. Well, he's checking, the whole data center, and it might be 1,000, 2,000, endpoints in there, not endpoints, but, processors. It's probably a lot more than that. But, they have that in the data center. He's making sure they're all secure, making sure they're running right, making sure the virtual firewalls are working the way they're supposed to. So he's double checking and everything else. If you can afford that person full-time or even part-time to come in and check your system every day. But you can afford it if you have an economy of scale where you're dealing with thousands of customers using your facilities. So that's the next, economy of scale. So, and it really, when they only charge you for what you use, well, then you're not paying for someone driving to the place and things like that. You're only paying for your percentage of use, and it seems to drop down year after year as they get better and better, and the processors get less expensive yet faster. So you benefit from a lot of those advancements in technology that you may incrementally only benefit from if you have your own server in your own building. So that really works well. The next is just the increased speed and agility. You have certain bandwidth issues, and let's say you're not going to buy a huge bandwidth, but these organizations such as Amazon Web Services, and I'm going to use them as an example because they're my favorite. They're the ones that I use, and it's the ones that I like to recommend because I know them very well and I know how good they are. And they really are the biggest ones out there. They're bigger than the other ones, Azure, Microsoft Azure, or Google, or any of the others. So they really have the biggest market share. But they can afford the major internet connections, super high speed, because when you're not using that internet connection, someone else in that building is. So they make sure that they have the bandwidth that's needed. So when your server is really being used a lot, you have the bandwidth, someone else's server is not. So they always properly size that. And there's no big commitment. You're not spending, committing to a bandwidth supplier that you're going to be doing it for 3 years. It's like, I called up Cox the other day and I wanted to cancel something. Actually renegotiate my contract, and they said, nope, contract's not up for another year. You're going to have to pay the whole thing if you want to change it. And so I just said, okay, I'll live with it, and then I'll go with a competitor after I'm done. But the bottom line is they don't have that issue, and you don't have that issue because you don't have a commitment of bandwidth for so long. So, and what's nice about that too is, you're at one location and you're moving to another, and I just did that. I just moved across the street from the building we were at before, but I had to pay like, $300 for them to move my internet connection. Well, I don't have to buy bandwidth that way anymore. Now, be honest with you, I still have to have internet connection to get to the cloud. But my server isn't sitting here, and I didn't have to turn it down and pack it up and put it in a box and then turn it up again when I got to the new building, and making sure it works and all that other stuff. As long as I can get internet access anywhere in the world, I can go down to Starbucks, okay? down the street, and I can open up my laptop, as long as I'm using VPN and some other cybersecurity issues, which we'll deal with hopefully in another video. But let's say I'm doing it securely. I can go and look at my database. I can go and run my business from home that night. I can go, on vacation and sit somewhere on the beach as long as I have internet access and a secure, and I can do it securely, and you can. I can access it from anywhere. So it's a lot more flexibility in that area. The nice thing too is, maybe you're not an IT person, and maybe you're not a cybersecurity person, but if you're not, then you don't have to focus on the technology. The technology is there for you to use, and you can focus on your own business and your business plans and how to develop your business plans. So if you're launching a new product and you're going to need a lot of bandwidth, well, it's just automatic. It's so simple. It's ridiculous. If you have one server in your office, but all of a sudden, 10,000 people want to hit your website at the same time, and you're hosting your own website, well, they're going to knock you down. Wherein, if you use Amazon Web Services or some of the other cloud providers, they just expand. They just add more servers instantly, and it is like really almost magical. I've seen it done. How fast they can add more servers. It's instantaneous. And again, you only pay for what you use. So this is a great idea. You always have to plan. If you're going to put your own equipment in your office, well, then you always have to plan what is going to be your max capacity. What are you going to need? Well, if you're seasonal, like you sell stuff at Christmas time, the rest of the year you only use 10% of your server, but at Christmas time it's huge and you need, 3 or 4 servers and you need this and that. Well, you don't have to guess at capacity. It's automatically added a capacity that you need. And again, you only pay for what you want. One of the things I used to do years ago when it came to voice products is, I think it was a tennis tournament in Carlsbad, California. But every year they had a tennis tournament, and what I'd have to do, or what my company would have to do, what we would have to do is come in and we'd put up, would cable for all the telephones, and they would have like 25 telephones 2 weeks or a month before, and they would hire all these temporary answered telephones. And then after it was over, they'd go all the way back down to one telephone again. But when they bought the phone system, they had to buy a sizable phone system to handle the 25 phones. Well, when it comes to computing, it's the same thing. It's, on your off season, you don't need to have, the servers sitting in the back room humming away. And yet when it's time to, a lot of people are accessing your servers. Of course, that's different than voice, but a lot of people are accessing your servers. You want something that can expand, that's elastic, that if you need 10 servers, you get 10 servers. If you only need them for a half hour, you get them for a half hour. If you need them for 2 days, you get them for 2 days. After the rush is over, it goes back down to to one server. They don't call them servers, by the way. They call them instances. So, they have different names, and the cloud is a lot different than just regular IT. And the next thing is you can go global in minutes. This is fantastic. You have a great idea, or you're producing a product, and you decide you want to build a website, and you want it to go out now. Well, you can do it now. You just put it, in the cloud, and it can go global, anywhere you want it to go. And you don't have to design it detailed wise and get access and make sure you have enough bandwidth, and you have to order bandwidth. Sometimes when you're ordering bandwidth from the phone company, like we used to order T1s. I don't think anybody has T1s anymore, but that was a special circuit. And when we would order the T1s years ago, what would happen is it would take 30 days for that T1 to come in the office. Well, with the cloud, you can go global within a few minutes. So you can work on your website. Then when you're all ready to publish your website, just put it up in the cloud, and they handle the bandwidth. They handle getting it anywhere in the world as fast as possible, and setting up the account so it absolutely works the way it's supposed to. who's hitting it and everything else. What's nice too is, if you have people in Europe trying to get to your website and you're in America, well, there's a edge point in Europe, so it's all local, so you have very little lag time from requesting the information, actually getting it. And so the endpoints are all throughout the world, so it always goes to the closest endpoint when they type in your website. Some of the last things that I want to talk to you about is when I talk to some IT people, they're like scared to death of the cloud. No one knows anything about the cloud. Well, that's not true. Most businesses, most big businesses that know what they're doing have a cloud presence. It's like just about everybody has a cloud presence. Actually, you just don't know it that you do. But it's very secure when it's done right. And being a cybersecurity person, I'm very interested in cybersecurity. If you don't have cybersecurity, really, you don't have anything. You can lose your database. You become responsible for things. But in future videos, I plan talking about cybersecurity in the web, and on the web, in the cloud. It's secure, it's done right, it's professional, and if you have an IT person saying it's scary and it's sketchy and everything else, then you really need another IT person, because that person doesn't know what they're talking about. It's more secure than putting your server in your building, and you got to get away from this feeling that I can touch it and I can see it and I can feel it. You don't need to touch it, see it, or feel it. And it could be more secure being in the web. How can it be more secure? Well, how about disaster recovery? How about if your building burns down? You don't have to worry about your database. You don't have to worry about anything else. You could just send all your people home with their laptops and just say work from home, and they could easily do it, especially today with voice over IP. You can work right out of your house. You can work right out of your vacation home. You can work anywhere in the world. So your building burns down, so big deal. If you got all your servers in that building, it's a big deal. It's going to take you a while to get back up. How about backups too? I remember dealing with this sizable organization. It had, more than just a handful of employees, and they were a production facility. And I said to them, how do you do backups? And the IT person said to me, well, the owner takes a tape home every night. And I said, is it every night? Not tape, takes a hard drive home every night. We give her a hard drive, she takes it home. And I said, every night? And he said, no. And I said, well, when's the last time that person's taken a hard drive home? Well, probably 2 weeks ago. Well, let's say if you had a disaster, a flood, someone came in and stole your server, let's say, that happens. And that person only has a backup from 2 weeks ago, then you lose 2 weeks worth of work. And so you always have to remember that there's some things that can be done on the web, can be done more securely, can be done more economically, and it's just better all around. And for disaster recovery and continuity of business, the web is the way to go. And don't get me wrong, you can back up from the web and take that hard drive home every night if you want. There's a lot of risk involved in there. People could steal that hard drive, and if you don't have it encrypted, then there's a problem. And of course, you have compliance issues and all. If you're dealing with HIPAA, if you're a health professional, you're dealing with HIPAA. There are situations in the cloud. Cloud providers actually have this down pat, where your database is encrypted. It's encrypted to the standard that's acceptable. You don't have to worry about it, and your backups are encrypted. In fact, we're going to have another video later on backups on the web. It's just fantastic. Multiple copies, things like that. And availability is pretty good. It's 99.99% of the time as far as access is concerned. So it used to be the old standard on telephones, which I don't think is anymore, but it used to be what they would call 5 nines. So it's 99.999% of the time your phone system should be up. Not your phone system, but the voice network out there, or whatever they call it today. It's not, I was thinking Pacific Bell, but now it's AT&T, it's other organizations out there. But 99.999% of the time they're supposed to be up and running, and I doubted that they ever were 99.999% of the time up and working. But when it comes to Amazon Web Services, access is 99.99% of the time. But when it comes to securing your backups, it's 11 nines. So it's 99.99999 out to the 11th nine. And that's pretty phenomenal. And what they say is if you have 10,000 objects, they call them objects in storage, which may be files or pictures or videos or things like that. In 10 million years, you will lose one object, and that's it. They make multiple copies, they pass them around, things like that. And I'm getting into another video. So just to let you know, security is in the web. It is more secure than you can possibly do in your building. It is better for disaster recovery and continuity of business. It is just all around a better deal, and it's a lot less expensive than owning the equipment yourself. And think through that whole idea of you don't own a generator in the back of your business. You buy the power that you need when you need it. So think it through that way, and see you on the next video. Thank you for watching.